teaching others, and your journey?
It's been a long process, but I want to start probably with the most dramatic shift and change in my life, and it I'll just tell you this story. So take a journey with me and just imagine that I'm in New York City in the winter. I am at a restaurant on the 35th floor of a private membership-only restaurant with big windows on the 35th floor on Manhattan, on Fifth Avenue. I'm sitting in this beautiful, big leather couch in my $1,700 custom-made suit and my expensive shoes, smoking a real fine cigar, and I'm looking out the window, and there's snowflakes, seriously, as big as toilet paper just falling down. It's the sexiest scene you could imagine. And I'm sitting there looking out the window thinking, wow, I have arrived. I mean, to the left of me is Al Sharpton. To the right of me is a New York football player. I mean, I'm really thinking I am it. I mean, this is what I've worked hard all my life to get to this place, to be in this chair. And as soon as I have that thought, I have another thought. As if something had tapped me on the shoulder and whispered in my ear, and what value did you have to sell to get here? Who are you? What happened to Danny Boy from Midlothian, Texas? What happened to that minister at age 17? What happened to that guy? And I was floored. It was like, I can't even have a moment here? I mean, I'm gonna get questioned? I was floored, and all of a sudden I'm looking out the window as it's snowing in New York, in Manhattan, and tears are going. I could see my reflection in the window, and I could see the tears running down my face. And I realized that I was lost and I was empty. That even with all that success, I was, at the time, I was an advisor to the Department of White House Personnel for President Obama. I was the president of a very prestigious C-suite organization in New York City. I had a great speaking career, being hired by some of the biggest companies in the world, and now it was empty. What had I done to get where I was in that chair at that moment? And I realized at that moment that I needed to do some soul searching. And I literally walked away from that entire career. I no longer was on the calls with the White House. I no longer, I had, was at the end of my presidency in New York, so I walked away from that. And I just went on a journey of traveling to the Himalayas and working with the monks, and going to the Amazon and learning from the shamans of the Amazon, and going to the Andes and working with the shamans and the Pacos of the Andes and the Quiro. And that was my journey for almost like about 5 to 7 years. That's what I did. And then one day, I don't know, maybe some of you have seen Forrest Gump, but there's a part in the movie where he's running, and then he just stops. And he says, I think that's all I have to say about that. He was done. And that's what happened to me. After all this searching, I stopped and I said, why did I do that? Why did I walk away from my career? It was as if I had forgotten what happened in that moment. And I kind of reached that point after going and studying with all these different people, that I was going, and why did I do this? Why did I leave my career? Why did I leave what man calls success to go out and find my truth? Well, my mother got sick almost 3 years ago now, actually, and she passed away about 1.5 years ago. And when I got the call that said, you need to come home, I realized that she was toward the end. So I went to see her in the hospital, and because my siblings had been there taking care of her night and day, and I was the one living in California, I told them to go home. I'll stay home with mom. I'll stay here in the hospital with mother. And I remember being in that cold hospital room, and I couldn't sleep because I was just looking at her and going, I don't want you to die. And all these machines were going off, and it would scare me. And so about 2 o'clock in the morning, I remember just looking at her intently, and everything I had learned from the monks and everything I had learned from the shamans came to my mind. And my ego wanted to say, you're a horrible son, you shouldn't have lived in California, you should have been closer, you should have seen her more. And my heart was my poor mom. You know, my dad had been killed in a car accident when I was 5, and now I'm not gonna have a mom. You know, and all of a sudden, all the training I had came to one moment. And I'm sitting there looking at her, and all of a sudden I realized that being present in that moment was very important, and I needed to shut all this stuff off and be present with my mother. And I'm looking at her, and all of a sudden I feel the struggle of her heart. I could feel her lungs within my lungs breathing, and I could feel her struggle to live within my body. And I'm just looking at her, and before I knew it, I was so present that all of a sudden all I saw was light. She became light and I became light. I wasn't mom, she wasn't mom, and I wasn't Daniel. I was just two spirits. And she looked over in my way, the spirit, the light did, and said to me something that changed my life forever. She said, many lifetimes ago, you and I made a contract with each other. And the contract was, before we came into this incarnation, that you would be here when I needed you. You've done that. Thank you. I release you of your contract. And I sat there and cried because I had never experienced something so beautiful. And I could have never been able to understand that without those years of studying and those years of developing a practice that would allow me to be so present. And that's what I call radical. Radical presence is about the practice of mindfulness. Being mindful and meditating and going to yoga and doing all stuff is great. But if you don't carry it through your entire day, it means nothing. If you do yoga and you get on the freeway and start flipping people off because the traffic is horrible, you don't have a practice. The practice is what got me to have that beautiful relationship with my mother in that second. And I was happy with her leaving because she was ready to go. And it was an incredible experience. And that's what I bring today to the world, is saying, whether you're new or whether you've been in studying spirituality for a long time, what is the radical part of your practice? Where's the practice behind the mindfulness, so that when life throws you a curve, your automatic default is not human stimulants like stress and anxiety and drugs and alcohol, which is what we go to. It's your practice, yoga, mindfulness, meditation, essential oils. And that's what's brought me to this place today, where I feel so complete with what happened with my mother. And there were many lessons, by the way, in those 2 days before I left. I had to leave her on Valentine's Day and go bring my son back to school. I didn't get to see her die. I had to leave on Valentine's Day and come home, and 2 days later I got the call saying she passed away. Well, we're going to talk about that and how important that event was. And this is what my new book's all about. It's all about that experience and what I had realized I had developed in a practice of my own that gave me the ability to be radically present, radically mindful.